Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Rachel and it's time for another week of What's for Dinner.
Gravel road, I've been asked to slow down. Fireplace, do you know how? Piles of paper, my desk is out. Who will care for the world now?
We're starting off on Sunday and I'm making stuffed peppers and stuffed mushrooms, but these peppers are going to be spooky. To get these spooky stuffed peppers started, I am just cutting off the top, and don't worry, I did not cut myself because my knife was dull. If I actually owned a sharp knife, I'd be in some trouble because I am such a klutz. So be careful. Don't do what I do. And all I'm doing for these peppers is cutting off the top and cleaning out the seeds.
Cover books I forget about, but who care for the world now? Rest with me, close the curtains, brew some herbal tea.
Once I have all of these peppers cleaned, start decorating them and carving them. So this green one, I am making kind of a Frankenstein face, or my version of a Frankenstein face. And I know that some people have better carving skills than I do, but that's okay because I still had fun doing these. I just cut out some notches in the top to be Frankenstein's hair, and then I got to work on his little face. And I just did the rest of the peppers in a demon or a devil and a pumpkin face as well.
Just rest with me, close the curtain, brew some herbal tea. Reach out for me.
Normally I make a meat and rice mixture to go inside of my stuffed bell peppers, but this time I am making more of a meatloaf type base. I'm using some dry onion soup mix and some breadcrumbs and a couple of eggs, and I just mixed it all together and then started stuffing it inside those peppers. And when you start putting the meat inside of the peppers, you can really see those faces a whole lot better. I just stuffed that meat down in there tight because it is going to shrink up a little bit. And I also just made an actual meatloaf out of the rest of that mixture. Whenever I get the chance, I like to cook ahead, like making a meatloaf for the next day. It can save you so much time in the long run if you just kind of think ahead a little bit and plan a little bit. I mean, as long as you don't mind eating a food that's similar to the one that you had the day before, then it works. For this little devil pepper, I just put a couple of red chili peppers down inside of it with no intention of eating the peppers, but I just thought it would look cute. But wouldn't you know, my husband had to eat the peppers, but he is a little maniac like that. And I'm just drizzling a little bit of this tomato sauce on top of each pepper just so that it can run through and keep that meat all nice and moist. And I'm going to put a little bit in the bottom of the pan because I want that liquid there to steam these peppers in the oven. Sometimes I layer a little veggie on the bottom of the pan, such as shredded cabbage or sauerkraut, and season up my tomato sauce, but I was just keeping it really easy and simple. I put a little bit of cheese on top of each pepper, and I thought that one was kind of funny because it made Frankenstein look like he actually had some hair. And then I just popped them in the oven. And so while those were cooking, I am getting our stuffed mushrooms ready. First, I browned up some regular breakfast sausage, and then I added a box of stuffing, and then another envelope of the beefy mushroom dry soup mix, and then I'm adding some crushed red pepper because, as you know, we like spicy. And so I'm just going to mix that all together and then add some water, just enough to moisten up the stuffing mix. Some sauteed onions and celery would have been really good as well, but I just didn't want to mess with it. So for my mushrooms, I just am cleaning out the stems and the little gills, getting the oil all brushed on. I'm using some avocado oil. It's just what I had. I have some in the bottom of the pan, so I'm just kind of rolling these mushrooms around and making sure they're coated on the inside and the outside. And then I'm sprinkling a little bit of garlic powder on each side as well. Mushrooms are a pretty bland food, so I just want to make sure that they are seasoned and flavored. I added a little bit of salt as well. And then I just flip them back over in my pan and arrange them so that I can begin to add the scoops of stuffing and sausage inside. And of course there is a lot left over, so all I'm going to do with that is just add it to the pan on the side so that it can brown up as well in the oven and used at a later date. I had a little bit of shredded Parmesan cheese left over in the fridge, so I figured why not? Cheese makes everything better. Next, I just rinsed out my pan that I cooked up the sausage and the stuffing in, and I added the recommended amount of water to make up some instant mashed potatoes. I added a can of golden mushroom soup on top of that meatloaf, and then I added a can of mushroom soup as well. And then here is what my peppers look like when they came out of the oven. I did get a message from my mother-in-law that said they looked gross, and I'm like, well, they're supposed to look gross. It's Halloween food. They sure were delicious though. And here are those potatoes, the peppers, and I'm just going to lift that up so you can see how that portobello mushroom cooked up, and it's so tender and flavorful. It's topped with that stuffing mix. Our meatloaf is done. I'm just letting that sit and cool. I did put it up for the next day. But here is my plate. I just scooped some of that tomato-y sauce on top of my mashed potatoes, and I thought that was really tasty. Everything was so good and comforting on this night. I decided to save the meatloaf for Tuesday when I'm at work late, and that way they would have something to eat while I was gone, but I still had lots of ground beef and sausage in the fridge, and that needed to be cooked up. So that is what I am making here. I just browned up that sausage and that ground beef with some onion, seasoned with some salt, pepper, and garlic powder. And then I am just removing the meat from the pan and putting it in a bowl on the side. And I'm just going to leave that oil in there, and I'm going to cook up some diced hash browns. Normally, I would just fry up some potatoes, but I was feeling pretty whooped on this day after work, so I just grabbed a bag of frozen potatoes, and I'm just going to fry these up in that hamburger and sausage grease, and I'm just seasoning with a little bit of seasoned salt and onion powder and some garlic powder. And I added a ton of black pepper because I really like it. And since this is such a big pan of potatoes and meat, I'm going to use 3 cans of cream of mushroom soup. Once the potatoes were all cooked up, I just added the meat and onions back into the pan with the potatoes. In our house, we call this meal slop. Now, doesn't that sound appetizing? It's one of those meals that just kind of came together when times were tough. And so here I am adding the Great Value cream of mushroom soup, and I'm also adding a can from Aldi's, and as you can see, they're different colors, different textures there. And then here is the Campbell's. I guess I would say these cans of soup are like cousins, where they're all in the same family, but they're all just a little different. Needless to say, my canned soup supply is running short in my pantry. But that's exactly how this meal got its name. You're just kind of throwing whatever you want to into the same pan and mixing it all together. I like to eat mine with ketchup, and my husband thinks I'm weird for that. But we didn't have any, so anyway, I spared him the agony of having to see me put ketchup on this. And as you can see in the background, I am just heating up some canned corn. I had mentioned that I felt like I needed a vegetable, and so that was what my husband picked up from the store on the way home. And it worked for me. And here is my plate. I'm just putting some butter on that corn, and that was all we had for dinner on this night. And everyone loved it as usual. Let me know if your family has a struggle meal that is now a family favorite. On Tuesday, I had to work, and this is what my husband sent. He looks like he had some lasagna and some meatloaf and a banana muffin. I had the white cheddar and bacon frozen mac and cheese at work. Wednesday night, we got home kind of late, like around 7:30, and so I just made up some salads and added some chicken to it. And this salad kit had some diced apples, and so I am just arranging my plate by spreading those apples around. I'm topping it with some crunchy stuff that came with it and some shredded cheese. We picked up some chicken bites from Sam's Club on the way home, and I just put them in the oven and got them cooked up nice and crispy, and then just added that to my salad. This salad kit came with a maple Dijon dressing, which I thought went really well with the chicken bites. This was a really easy and simple, quick meal to just throw together when you don't have a lot of time, you're tired, and you kind of want to eat, but you kind of don't. Also, I kept it pretty light because, like I said, it was already 7:30 when we got home and closer to 8:30 by the time we actually ate dinner, and I don't like to eat a heavy meal before bed. And I really did enjoy the mixture of the maple Dijon dressing along with those apples and the chicken. The next dinner was actually just me making a hamburger for myself. Bill had pool league on this night, and the boys had been out running some errands, and they picked up fast food, so I just made a onion burger for myself. Now, in theory, this does work, but you have to be careful and not forget about your onions and burn them like I did. But if you've watched my channel at all, you know that I don't mind eating burnt crispy food, especially a burger. And I just use one of my small cast iron skillets and put it on top of my burger just to smash it down and put some weight on it. Then once that burger was cooked on both sides, I just added a slice of cheese. This is one of those instances where you're just eating something. I mean, would I call it a real dinner or a meal? I don't know, because it was just a burger. And I just put some mayo on my bun, and that was all. That was my dinner. The next day was Friday and we made it to the weekend. Woohoo! We had a couple of grandkids over for the night and I was just throwing together a really quick pot of chili. And although my children grew up eating things like chili, my grandkids are not real keen on it. So I did make some waffle sandwiches for them. That's what they asked for, so that's what they got. And so for the rest of us, I'm just making this chili. I had some onion. I chopped that up and cooked it with the meat. I'm using the tops of these bell peppers that I had used earlier in the week on those stuffed peppers. I had saved them in the refrigerator and now they're coming back out to go into my chili. Once I had all those peppers chopped up, I added a packet of hot chili seasoning, which I think I picked up at Aldi. Then I just gave it a chop and a stir until all pieces of that ground beef were browned up. I like to season up my hamburger meat before I drain it and afterward. And I came in with my meat masher just to make sure that all those big chunks of meat were chopped up really nice and small. I had the rest of this box of tomato sauce in my refrigerator from when I made the stuffed bell peppers as well, so we're using that this time. That's what I love about chili. You can pretty much do whatever you want to it. I added one more package of chili seasoning mix since I had already drained off the grease from my hamburger meat, and some of that seasoning went with it. I did add some water at this point as well. Next, I drained and rinsed a can of dark red kidney beans. I'm just using what we had in our pantry, and I only wanted to add 1 can of beans this time just because we've been having some issues with beans in the family. So 1 can it is. And even though we were using the hot chili seasoning, I still came back with our crushed red pepper because we like our chili spicy. Although this was pretty mild for us. I just gave it a stir and then let it simmer. Normally I add diced tomatoes to chili, but we didn't have any, so it was fine without it. On this day, I just wanted some good old saltine crackers with my chili, so I put a few in the bottom of my bowl and then just poured a ladle or 2 of that chili right on top. And I wanted some shredded cheddar cheese to go on top, but I didn't have any, so I just did mozzarella and it tasted just fine. The next morning, the grandkids were up bright and early and they were ready to get outside and go to the park. We had a great time at the duck pond and just walking around collecting things like walnuts and acorns and sticks and heart-shaped rocks and you name it. We had a fun lunch at the pumpkin patch and then I took them home. At the end of the day, my husband said he wanted to take me to dinner, and I was all for it. And to start off, I had a raspberry margarita. We had dinner at Red Lobster. It is all-you-can-eat shrimp, which is my husband's favorite holiday. I started with a salad and a cheddar bay biscuit, and he had an appetizer of seafood stuffed mushrooms, and of course, I had to steal one of those as well. They are so delicious. But for my main entree, I opted to have steak cooked medium with a baked potato with sour cream and butter. And that was our very last dinner for the week. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please make sure that you hit the subscribe button so you can see more of my future videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.